Lagos has a way of swallowing people whole. The city is loud, restless, and unbothered by the lives it crushes along the way. But for 16-year-old Amina, Lagos wasn't just the background. It was the battlefield where her life would be fought and lost. Before everything fell apart, Amina was just an ordinary girl. She lived with her parents in a single rented room in a compound in Surulere. Her father, Mr. Okafor, was a bus conductor on the Ojulegba route, a man who came home each night smelling of sweat, diesel, and dust. Her mother sold akara and pap in front of their building every morning. The smell of frying oil and pepper, waking Amina up before the sun. They didn't have much. Sometimes they didn't have enough to pay school fees, and Amina would stay home, listening to the noise of children playing in the street while her classmates sat in class. But they had each other, and for Amina, that was enough. She used to dream of finishing secondary school, working in a small fashion shop, and maybe one day opening her own boutique. The first crack in that simple life came with her father's cough. At first, it was nothing unusual. Lagos dust had a way of making everyone cough. But this was different. His cough was deep, chesty, and constant. Weeks passed, and instead of getting better, he grew thinner. The cough was joined by a fever that refused to leave. There was no money for a real hospital visit, just occasional herbal remedies from roadside sellers. Amina remembered the day it got bad. She had been helping her mother fry a kara when a neighbor came running into the compound. "Auntie, they've taken your husband to the clinic," the woman said, her face tight with worry. Amina's mother dropped the spoon into the hot oil, splashing it onto her own hand, but she didn't even flinch. They both rushed out, leaving the akara to burn. By the time they reached the small private clinic, the nurse was shaking her head. Amina stood frozen as she heard the words. "We tried our best. He didn't make it." Her mother collapsed right there in the waiting room, wailing until her voice broke. Life after her father's death became a shadow of what it used to be. Her mother still tried to work the akara stand, but grief made her slow, distracted. She began skipping her own meals, pretending she had already eaten, just so Amina could have more. Amina started noticing how her mother's face had hollowed, how her eyes seemed to carry a weight she couldn't put into words. Then, 2 months later, it happened again. Amina had gone to fetch water from a nearby tap when she heard someone shouting her name. She turned to see a group of neighbors running toward her, panic written all over their faces. "Your mama, she fainted." She dropped the water container and ran as fast as her legs would carry her. When she reached the akara stand, her mother was lying on the ground, the oil still bubbling in the pan above. Someone had already called an okada, and they lifted her gently onto it. The hospital bills were more than they could afford. The doctor's words were blunt. Without proper treatment, there wasn't much they could do. 2 weeks later, Amina was standing at another graveside, watching the rain turn the red earth into mud as her mother was lowered into it. She didn't cry that day. She just stood there, her arms wrapped around herself, the cold rain soaking her clothes, thinking, "Now I'm really alone." After the burial, Amina went to her mother's cousins, one by one. The first one in Mushin shook his head before she even finished speaking. "My wife just had a baby. Things are hard. You'll have to manage somewhere else." Another relative in Yaba wouldn't even open the door, just peered through a gap in the curtain and said, "We can't take you in." "Sorry." By the end of the week, Amina realized no one was coming to save her. Her first night on the streets was the longest of her life. She wandered aimlessly until she found herself under the Ojulegba Bridge, where a group of street kids were curled up together, sleeping on flattened cartons. None of them asked who she was or why she was there. In street life, everyone has a sad story. She lay down a little distance away from them, her head resting on her arm, trying to ignore the stench of urine and the sound of rats scurrying nearby. Every noise made her jump, the distant shouts of bus conductors, the heavy rumble of trailers above, the occasional drunk man staggering past. She didn't sleep, she just waited for morning. By the next day, hunger had settled in like a sickness. Her stomach cramped, her head ached, and her lips were dry. That afternoon, she spotted a middle-aged woman selling oranges by the roadside. "Madam, can I help you? I can call customers," Amina said, her voice hoarse. The woman looked her up and down. "You hungry?" Amina nodded. "All right, you help me for the day. I'll give you some oranges to eat." That became her routine. She stood by the roadside under the scorching sun, calling out, "Sweet oranges, very sweet." Sometimes people bought, sometimes they didn't. At the end of the day, she would eat 2 or 3 oranges, drink a sachet of water, and return to her spot under the bridge. Weeks passed like this. Hunger, exhaustion, and the constant fear of being robbed or attacked at night. She learned to keep one eye open while sleeping and to hide whatever little money she had in the sole of her slippers. Then, one late afternoon, the sky turned dark. The smell of rain filled the air, and Lagos traffic slowed to a crawl. Amina packed up the oranges and started walking quickly toward her usual sleeping spot. The first raindrop hit her cheek, then another. Within minutes, the heavens opened, pouring sheets of water that soaked her to the skin. She ran for cover, but every dry corner was already taken. The cold bit into her bones, and she wrapped her arms around herself, shivering violently. That's when she heard a woman's voice behind her. "Hey, over here!" Amina turned and saw her, a tall, light-skinned woman with neatly braided hair, standing in the doorway of a small shop. She looked different. Her jeans were clean, her blouse crisp, her smile warm in a way Amina hadn't seen in months. "You'll catch cold out there," the woman said, beckoning her. "Come inside." Amina hesitated. Street life had taught her to be suspicious. Kindness often came with a price. But the rain was merciless, and she had nowhere else to go. Inside, it was warm and dry. The woman handed her a towel and poured her a steaming cup of tea from a flask. "Drink," she said. Amina sipped slowly, the heat spreading through her chest. "My name is Cynthia," the woman said. "What's yours?" "Amina. Where do you live?" Amina hesitated again, then murmured, "Nowhere." Cynthia's expression softened. "I have a spare room in my flat. You can stay for a few days until you figure things out. You shouldn't be sleeping outside. It's dangerous for a young girl." Amina looked at her, unsure whether to believe her. But the rain outside was pounding harder now, and the thought of another freezing night under the bridge made her nod. "Okay." And just like that, Amina stepped into a new chapter of her life, one that began with warmth, but would end in a way she could never have imagined. Amina woke the next morning to the faint hum of a standing fan and the soft rhythm of gospel music drifting from somewhere in the flat. For a moment, she lay still, trying to remember where she was. Then she felt the weight of the thick blanket over her and the coolness of clean sheets under her skin. She hadn't felt anything like this in months. Her eyes wandered around the small, tidy room. The curtains were light blue, the walls freshly painted. A small wooden table sat in the corner with a glass of water and a plate covered with a saucer. Her wet clothes from the night before were gone, replaced with a neatly folded t-shirt and shorts at the foot of the bed. She sat up slowly, half wondering if this was some kind of dream. Cynthia appeared at the doorway, smiling. "Morning, sleepyhead. You were out like a light. I thought you'd sleep the whole day." Amina smiled shyly. "Good morning." "I made breakfast," Cynthia said, stepping in with a tray. On it was fried plantain, scrambled eggs, and a steaming cup of tea. The smell alone made Amina's stomach twist with hunger. "I can't remember the last time I ate something like this," Amina admitted, her voice soft. "Then eat," Cynthia said, setting the tray down. "You're too young to be starving." Amina didn't need telling twice. She ate slowly at first, but soon her hunger took over. Cynthia watched, occasionally chuckling at how quickly the food disappeared. The first few days felt like a blessing Amina didn't deserve. Cynthia's flat was small, but warm. 2 bedrooms, a cozy living room, and a kitchen that always smelled faintly of vanilla. The spare room she gave Amina had its own small wardrobe, and Cynthia even bought her a few clothes from the market. Amina washed herself every day with warm water, something she hadn't been able to do for months. Every evening, Cynthia came home carrying food. Rice and chicken one day, amala and uadu the next. She never complained about Amina's presence, never asked for money. It felt like Amina had stepped into another life entirely. Still, Amina noticed things. Some nights, she woke to the sound of deep male voices in the living room, mixed with the clinking of glasses and low laughter. The first time she peeked out, she saw a man in an expensive suit sitting with Cynthia, speaking in low tones. When Cynthia noticed her, she quickly said, "Go back to bed, Amina. It's late." Another time, Amina saw a tall man she didn't recognize, leaving the flat early in the morning. He smiled at her briefly, but there was something about the way his eyes lingered on her that made her skin prickle. She told herself it wasn't her business. She was just grateful for a safe place to sleep. A week after Amina had moved in, Cynthia came into her room one evening holding a glass of wine. She sat down at the edge of Amina's bed, her tone unusually serious. "Amina, we need to talk about your future," she began. Amina felt a flicker of anxiety. "My future?" "Yes, dear. You can't live here forever without contributing. I've taken care of you for a whole week. Food, clothes, a roof over your head. I'm happy to help, but it's time you start making money for yourself." Amina nodded slowly. "I can work. Maybe I can sell things. Fruits, clothes, anything." Cynthia smiled faintly, but there was something sharper in her eyes now. "You could do that, sure, but let me be honest with you. That kind of work won't get you far. You'll spend all day under the hot sun for little change. There's another way, a better way." Amina's chest tightened. "What way?" Cynthia leaned closer, lowering her voice. "I have wealthy clients, very wealthy. They pay millions for special company. You'd only need to spend one night with them, and you could make more than most people earn in years." Amina's brow furrowed. "Special company?" Cynthia's smile widened. "You'll entertain them. Sometimes they have unique preferences. One of my clients is coming from America tomorrow. He's offering 5 million naira for one night. And," she paused, her tone almost playful, "he's bringing his pet." Amina blinked. "Pet? You mean?" Dog? Yes, Cynthia said smoothly. It's not unusual in this business. You're not the first. Think about it. 5 million naira, Amina. No more hunger, no more sleeping under bridges. One night and your life changes. Amina's hands trembled in her lap. I can't, I can't do that. Cynthia's face hardened. Then maybe you should start packing. I'm not running a charity. That night, Amina lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The rain tapped against the window, the same way it had the night she met Cynthia. She thought about her mother's warm smile, her father's rough hands guiding her across busy streets, the smell of akara frying in the morning. She thought about the cold concrete under the bridge, the nights she went to sleep with nothing in her stomach, and the men who looked at her like prey. By morning, her decision was made. She left Cynthia's flat without saying goodbye. Back on the streets, reality hit like a slap. She tried to get her old orange selling job back, but the woman had already hired another girl. 2 days passed with Amina surviving on scraps, a half-eaten bread roll from a roadside bin, a bottle of water given by a stranger. On the third night, as she searched for a place to sleep, a man grabbed her arm and tried to drag her into a dark alley. She kicked and clawed until he let go, then ran without looking back.